Hello everyone, this is Nathanael Rutherford with Vol Basketball Fever here for another matchup breakdown for the Tennessee Volunteers. Thank you all so much for watching this video. Please like it, do all the YouTube stuff here. Comment down below with your thoughts on this matchup with Alabama on the road in Tuscaloosa. Again, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and thank you all for stopping by. Also, be sure to listen to the podcast on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, wherever you are, we're Vol Basketball Fever. So Tennessee tips off against Alabama at 9 o'clock Eastern time on Wednesday night. It's 8 o'clock Central time, I believe, local time there in Tuscaloosa. Again, assuming there's not any sort of COVID delays or any players out, this is my breakdown for the game and kind of how I see it playing out and what Tennessee needs to do to win and their chances of winning. I believe Alabama opened up as a 1.5 point favorite. I think it's moved up to a 3-point favorite. And there are a lot of good reasons for that. Bama comes into this game as one of the most tested teams in the country. They have an adjusted strength of schedule on KenPom that ranks number 18 in the country. They've already played teams like number 1 Gonzaga on KenPom, which they beat Gonzaga. Number 4 Houston, which Alabama beat them as well. Number 31 Memphis, which Alabama did lose to. And number 54 Davidson, who Alabama just lost to. So they're 2-2 in those games, and all but 3 of their 12 opponents so far this season are currently ranked in the top 100 on KenPom. So they come into this game with a lot of tests on their belt, with a lot of really good teams and pretty decent and really good mid-major teams they've played this season so far. Although Bama right now, at this point of the season, 12 games in, is slightly worse at shooting threes than they were last year, they still make a lot of them. Last year they made 35.2% of their threes. This year they're making 33.7%. But they're still making basically 10 in games, like 9.9, and they made 10.5 last year. So they're on pace basically for making the same amount of threes per game just about as last year. Jaden Shackelford leads the way with a 41.4% percentage from behind the three-point line. Keon Ellis is making 35.4, and Darius Miles is making 36.1. So those are kind of the three guys you really need to hone in on as fans here to look at for Alabama from behind the three. Their offense will be the most efficient offense that Tennessee's faced this year. You know, Arizona put up the most points per game. Tennessee's also faced Villanova, which put up a lot of points. But technically, Alabama's is the most efficient according to KenPom. They're ranked 9th in adjusted offensive efficiency. Villanova's ranked 12th. Arizona's ranked 14th. And UNC's ranked 17th, So Tennessee's faced 3 top 20 offenses on KenPom offensive adjusted efficiency. And Tennessee is 2-1 against those teams. But they did give up an average of 72 points per game in those 3 games. And Bama currently averages 82.9, so basically 83 points per game. And they've scored at least 73 points in all but 2 of their contests this season. Alabama is exceptional from inside the three-point line. You know them more as a three-point shooting team, and they're really good at that. But they've been elite in the 2-point shooting game this year, mid-range and down low. They shoot 58.6% on their 2-point field goals, which is 12th in the entire country, so top 15 in the country. Charles Bediako, big center, 5-star guy, is a big reason why. He's making 71.2% of his field goal attempts this year. Mentioned Keon Ellis earlier already. He's 70.6% from 2. Juwan Gary is 66.7%, and J.D. Davison is 64.3%. So they're all big factors there. Noah Gurley, who hasn't maybe been as good as I think as some people maybe thought, he's still making 61% from 2 as well. Bama is, speaking of three-pointers though, from earlier, they are 4-0 when shooting better than 38% from 3, but all 3 of their losses this season have come when they've shot 33.3% or worse from 3. They're just 5-3 when making below that mark this season. They're also 4-0 when making 13 or more threes, but 5-3 when making 12 or fewer. So as good as they are, obviously down low, Bama's still bread and butter seems to be the three-point line for them. So again, their offense is just really good and has found a lot of ways to score multiple ways this season. So they don't boast a ton of size, which you'd think if they're that good from 2 that they have really good post presence. They don't have a ton of size. They do have Bediako, who's 7 foot. They do have Gurley, who's 6'8". But the rest of the team is around 6'6" or shorter. But they do have 3 guys who are 6'6". That's Ellis, Gary, and Darius Miles. But despite not being the most elite height team like Arizona was that Tennessee just faced, they rebound the ball really well. Alabama does. They rank 36th in the country, basically averaging 41 rebounds a game, and 27th in offensive rebounds per game at 12.8. Jaden Shackelford, it's only 6'3". He leads the team in rebounds. He's one of the shooting guard for them, leads the team in scoring and rebounds. He averages 6.6 per game, with Keon Ellis coming right behind him at 6.5 per game. So, they're smaller guys, they're guards, they do a really good job of rebounding as well. It's not just the big guys for Alabama. The entire team basically does a really good job of rebounding the ball. So interestingly, Alabama's actually been a little bit slow out the gates this year. They've not been the most efficient and greatest in the first half, but they've really poured it on in the second half. Tennessee just faced Arizona, who is the second best team in the entire country when it comes to points per game in the second half. They're averaging a little over 46 points per game in the second half this season, and Tennessee just gave up 52 points to them in the second half in their game against Arizona in Knoxville recently. Alabama's right behind them. They're third best in the country in points per game in the second half, averaging 45.6 in the second half. So it's really, really key and really important that Tennessee gets out to an early lead if they want to win this game and hold a lead at halftime, because Alabama's going to, I imagine, probably turn on the offense the second half and really, be able to score a lot of points and try to put up 50 on Tennessee like Arizona just did. Kind of the last point here about Alabama before I move on to talking a little bit more about Tennessee. Bama has owned Tennessee and Tuscaloosa. The Vols are only 19-45 all-time in Tuscaloosa against the Tide, but they did win their last meeting between the two teams in Tuscaloosa, 69-68 on February 4th, 2020. And Tennessee is actually 4-4 against Alabama and Tuscaloosa in the last 8 meetings dating back to 2008. So only 19-45 overall, but four of those wins have come in the last 8 meetings dating back over the last 13, 14 years or so. But it is also worth noting Tennessee is a very different team this year away from Thompson-Boling. In their neutral court and away games this year, Tennessee is only averaging 65.8 points per game and only making 23.4% of their threes away from Thompson-Boling. So Tennessee is going to have to find a way to score against this Alabama team because Alabama can put up points, much like Arizona did. I do think Tennessee's defense is going to be, good and still stout. More on that in just a second, but Tennessee is going to absolutely have to shoot the ball a lot better than what they have been so far away from Thompson-Boling Arena. To kind of look at Tennessee here now, and kind of switch gears a little bit and give some more pros towards Tennessee rather than pros towards Alabama. Bama's defense last year was surprisingly efficient, but this year they've really taken a step back and are really missing Herb Jones's defensive presence from last year. Last season, Alabama's defense ranked number 3 in defensive efficiency on KenPom, and they gave up 70.1 points per game. This year, though, they've dropped 50 spots and ranked 53rd on KenPom on defense efficiency, which is still not bad, but again, that's 50 spots difference, and they're giving up a little bit more than 3 points per game at 73.3 points per game compared to last year. Charles Bediako has been a really solid player on defense and is averaging a little over 2 blocks per game for Alabama this year, and Alabama ranks 41st in the country at 5.1 blocks per game. But teams are making an average of 27.2 field goals a game against Alabama, which is one of the highest rates in the country. Alabama's 2-point field goal defense has been probably almost as bad as their 2-point offense has been good this season. They are allowing teams to make 51% from inside the 3-point line, which again is one of the worst in the country. The Tide are 4-3 this year when giving up at least 70 points in a game, and are allowing 81 points per game in their 3 losses. So their defense, again, was really efficient last year. With the high tempo they played at last year, the high pace, they gave up a decent amount of points, but their defense efficiency was actually really good. They're really good at forcing turnovers. This year, not as much. And again, especially in the 2-point defense there, allowing cuts from guards and allowing interior players to, score more at will this year than last year. This defense, Tennessee's defense, will actually be the best efficiency-wise that Bama has faced this season. But Bama still has played some really good defenses and put up some points, though. Tennessee's defense currently ranks 2nd on KenPom in the adjusted defensive efficiency, and are only allowing 59.3 points per game. The best defenses that Bama has played so far are Houston, which ranks 5th, so not too far off where Tennessee's is, Gonzaga's, which is 13th, and Memphis, which ranks 35th. And Bama is, of course, 2-1 in those contests, and they average 84 points per game in those 3 games, But I will say that, scoring went down in all those games. They played Gonzaga first, Houston second, and then Memphis third in that order in the scheduling. And, they scored less points each time they played those stellar defenses. Bama's 2-point offense I mentioned earlier is elite, but the Vols' 2-point defense is almost on par with Alabama's in terms of an efficiency standpoint. Teams are only making 43.7% of their 2-point field goal attempts against Tennessee, and as a whole, teams are only making 21.3 field goals per game against UT, which ranks 29th in the country. So they're giving up basically like the 29th least field goals per game this season. And that partially has to do with, I guess, some pace of play. But Tennessee is playing with more tempo this year, but also just shows that how good Tennessee's defense is at not allowing teams to make shots. Bama has never made fewer than 23 field goals in a game this year. Again, Tennessee's only giving up an average of 21 per game, basically, and Bama's never made fewer than 23, so something's going to give there. But Bama is also 4-3 this season when they don't make more than 30 field goals in a game. So if Tennessee holds them to under 30 made field goals in a game, the chances of them beating them go way up, because they're 5-0 when they make 31 or more, 4-3 when they make fewer than 30. Or they don't make over 30, so 30 or less. As I mentioned earlier, Tennessee's been much worse at making threes away from home this year, but Bama has been pretty subpar at defending the three this season. Again, going back to the defense, taking a step back from last year, Alabama is 3-2 this season when allowing teams to make 34% or better from three. Tennessee has yet to make, I think one time against UNC, they've shot better than that, but most of the time this year away from Thompson-Boling, they've not shot better than 34% from three. But the Vols are a perfect 6-0 this season when making 34% from three or better. So Tennessee can find a way to connect on 34-35% of their threes in Colton Coliseum. Tennessee has a really good chance of winning because, again, they're undefeated this year when making at least 34% from three. Again, going back to Bama's defense, they have had issues forcing turnovers this year, and the Vols do a good job of keeping possession and not making silly mistakes. They do a really good job of not turning the ball over. The Vols are averaging just a little over 10 turnovers per game, and the Vols are 9-1 when turning the ball over 13 times or fewer this season. And Bama has only forced 13 or more turnovers in a game 4 times in the 12 games they've played this year. So, again, Tennessee 9-1 when they've had 13 or fewer turnovers, and Bama's only forced 13 or more turnovers 4 times. That is a huge key in this game for Tennessee. Also a huge key for Tennessee, and if they want to win this game, is Kennedy Chandler, Tennessee 5-star freshman. To use an analogy here, he's the straw that kind of stirs the milkshaker, or however you want to say it there. He's the spark that kind of gets the offense going, is kind of, I guess, a better way of saying it. He is shooting only 22.7% in UT's losses this season, compared to shooting 48.7% in UT's wins. So if he's on offensively, Tennessee has a much, much, much better chance of winning. Again, I think with the outlier there being the Arizona game where he wasn't shooting particularly effectively, did finish with 8 points. Again, not great, but not horrible, but he also affected the game in other ways, had I think 3 or 4 rebounds, 3 or 4 assists, and only 2 turnovers in like 30-something minutes played, which is very solid, especially for a true freshman. Kind of lastly here, the last point with Tennessee, then I have one more kind of just off-the-wall point about this game. Tennessee's offense is predicated on ball movement and trying to create good shots. More so this year than anything, they've kind of liked to run the floor more, but, again, making some passes, making the good passes, making a good extra pass, and getting a lot of assists. Tennessee is averaging the 9th most assists per game in the country with 18.6 per game. UT has totaled 18-plus assists in 7 of their 11 games this season. And Alabama, by the way, meanwhile, not great at forcing turnovers, also not great at limiting that extra pass and forcing teams to, play isolation ball and do and all that stuff and kind of, make their offense not move well. Bama this season is 0-2 when allowing an opponent to total 18 assists or more in a game. And again, Tennessee's done that 7 of the 11 times this season they've played. And Alabama is 2-3 when opponents total 13 or more assists in a game, which Tennessee has done like almost every game this year. Have they totaled 13 or more assists in a game? So that's another key. Can Tennessee's offense keep the ball moving? Can they keep doing what they like to do? Can they get more transition buckets? Can they do what they've done in their wins this year and get good offense and not have to settle for a bunch of threes and have the actual post presence? I think that's going to be a huge key in this game. Kind of lastly here, just a little tidbit that I thought was interesting. This will be the first time in almost 21 years that these two teams have both been ranked when they played each other. This is the first time since January 9th, 2001 that Tennessee and Alabama have played each other both ranked in the top 25 of the AP poll. Tennessee won that game, but the series is split at 4 wins apiece when these two teams play each other, both ranked in the AP poll. So whoever wins this game will have the slight advantage in that, kind of odd statistical category. But thank you all so much for tuning in. That is it for the Vol Basketball Fever matchup breakdown here for the Vols, taking on Alabama in Tuscaloosa, 9 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Central. It's going to be a late tip-off. Again, it's, between Christmas and New Year's, a lot of people have this time off, or work schedules aren't as hectic. So hopefully we're able to stay up and watch the whole game. And we'll be talking about, hopefully, a Tennessee win when we record our next podcast, maybe Thursday or Friday this week. So again, I'm Nathanael Rutherford. Like this video, comment down below what your thoughts on this game and what you think the score prediction is going to be. Subscribe if you haven't already. I don't have a great feeling about this game, just to kind of throw my 2 cents in there. I'm not going to give an official score prediction, but there are a lot of things that play into Alabama's strengths here that I don't think, I don't know, I have a bad feeling about this game. I would love to see Tennessee win, but I'm never going to have my hopes too high when playing in Tuscaloosa. So we'll see. I would like to be proven wrong, and I really hope Tennessee wins this game because it's against Alabama, and it seems like Tennessee has a hard time beating Alabama in any sport nowadays besides women's basketball. Even then, though, it's been more of a struggle than it should be lately. But anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I'm Nathanael Rutherford. See you guys later.